Okay, I'm going to talk about books tonight. I'm making two assumptions as you're going through here, that those of you who have been reading Neal Stephenson and Malcolm Gladwell are reading books that are a little bit off the beaten path, and so the books that I'm going to suggest are also off the beaten path a little bit. The second assumption I'm going to make is that you're not interested in reading schlock, that you don't have time to read schlock, and neither do I. If you read, on average, 3 books a week, then that would put you at 150 books a year. And in 2008, in the United States alone, we published over 500,000 books. And that gets bigger every year. There is no way to keep up. So don't read books that are mediocre. Don't read books that you don't like. And I'm going to ask for some audience participation as you go. If I'm talking about a book and you have some familiarity with it, could you give some sort of signal so that the people around you can come find you and talk about the book with you afterwards? All right, 10 books, 5 fiction, 5 nonfiction. The first one is Unbroken. Unbroken is the story of Louis Zamperini, who, read it? Yeah, great book. Has a plane crash during World War II, ends up in a raft for 6 weeks, fighting off sharks, out of the water, and then gets captured by the Japanese as a POW for 2 years. He's tortured, he's beaten, and he has to come back to the United States and put his life back together again, which he does. He's a 93-year-old living in California. Great story of courage. Another story of courage is Zatoun. Zatoun is a Syrian-American who is in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And as Hurricane Katrina recedes and he survives that, he goes out in his canoe and he helps people and he helps pets. And through a misunderstanding, the National Guard grabs him in the middle of the book and he disappears for several weeks. No one knows where he is, thanks to FEMA and Homeland Security. On a lighter note, Major Pettigrew's Last Stand is a love story. Major Pettigrew is a little bit like Colonel Mustard, and he is in love with a woman in the village that his family finds completely unsuitable because 1, she is a shopkeeper, and 2, she is Muslim, and 3, she is Pakistani, but he triumphs with true love. And I must say this is the best morning after scene that I have ever read in English literature. The collected works of T.S. Spivet features T.S., who is a 12-year-old cartographer from Montana. He wins a prize from the Smithsonian and takes off across the country with a train. It's a wonderful book because it has illustrations, and so it's like reading hypertext, as he has maps along the margins. And you can look at his website. The Many Deaths of the Firefly Brothers is an adventure story, and you have to suspend disbelief because it's these 2 brothers who are bank robbers during the Depression, and they never die. They get in gunfights, and they don't die. Whereas a more traditional mystery series is written by Alan Bradley about an 11-year-old chemist named Flavia DeLuce. And if you are a nerdy girl, or if you love a nerdy girl, you're going to love Flavia DeLuce. The Air Affair is an interesting combination of science fiction and mystery. Thursday Next is the protagonist. She is a detective, and she can jump into the book world. So she goes and she saves Jane Eyre from the villain that is antagonizing her. It is full of literary allusions and puns. For those of you who are entrepreneurs, there are 2 books here. One is by Phil Vischer, who has written about VeggieTales. He's the creator of VeggieTales, and he believed that God had told him to start Big Idea. So when Big Idea crashes as a company, he is left with the idea of 1, why did my company crash? And 2, why did it crash if God was in favor of this? Another great entrepreneurial book is The Dressmaker of Kara Khan, which is the story of Camille Siddiqui. She's an Afghan woman under the Taliban regime who figures out how to start a dressmaking business and how to start a dressmaking school. And she takes off from there with amazing constraints. If you can imagine, how do you negotiate through a burqa? And then finally, the last book, Whatever It Takes, is a wonderful story about pre-K education and the way that poverty and public schools can work together, featuring Jeffrey Canada, who runs the Harlem Children's Project in New York. So, if you want to continue the conversation, I'd invite you to Goodreads, which is a social networking site which includes books, book reviews, and if you want to continue with me in particular, I'm Marshall Joanne at gmail.com. Thank you.